Rain hissed as it hit the landing pads of the Terran embassy on Zelmanar 4, steam curling up from the heated metal as the drops evaporated instantly. Rhys Maddox adjusted the collar of his uniform and squinted up at the sky, which shimmered with the planet's odd twin suns filtering through thick, greenish clouds. The air always smelled faintly of vinegar here, but after 3 months he barely noticed. Ambassador Maddox came the familiar, mechanical accent of the translator module worn by the alien standing just inside the terminal doors. Rhys smiled with that diplomatic tightness he'd perfected over the years. "Envoy Kelver. You're early." Kelver blinked one slow, deliberate movement of his vertical eyelids. "You requested a cultural exchange. I am prepared. Shall we begin?" Rhys nodded and stepped forward. "You're going to regret saying that." Kelver's species, the Vellari, were tall, wiry creatures with translucent skin that shimmered like oil on water. Their culture was built on logic and measured restraint, their diets consisting mainly of nutrient paste and void-grown vegetables. They considered strong flavors offensive, even dangerous, which made Rhys's proposal particularly bold or, as his "I find this practice contradictory to your biological limitations. That's what makes it fun." They entered the kitchen, where a long steel table had been set with a selection of spices and peppers from Earth, each labeled and ranked by Scoville heat units. At the far end stood a single Carolina Reaper, resting in a glass container like a dangerous relic. Rhys gestured broadly. "This is the spectrum, from mild to madness." Kelver approached cautiously, examining the labels with analytical interest. "Capsaicin is toxic in sufficient quantities. Your species lacks the biological mechanisms to neutralize it efficiently. How do you survive ingestion of these substances?" "Adaptation, mostly. We build tolerance. Some of us even enjoy the pain." Kelver's gaze lingered on the Reaper. "This one. It is the most potent." Rhys hesitated. "Technically no, but close enough. It's the one that nearly sent a senator into cardiac arrest during a bet last year." Kelver turned to him, posture stiff. "I will try it." "What?" No. You start here." Rhys pointed to a mild jalapeno. Kelver didn't move. "If this is the pinnacle of your species' spice tolerance, then it is the most relevant sample." Rhys sighed. Kelver's body convulsed, a high-pitched whine escaping him as his skin shifted violently through shades of green and blue. The medical team restrained him, injecting a stabilizing compound into the base of his neck. "His system's going into thermal shock," one of the medics shouted. "Pulse erratic. Core temperature rising past safe limits." Rhys took a step back, heart pounding. "I told him not to start with that one." It took 20 minutes and 2 liters of cooling fluid to stabilize Kelver. He lay on a stretcher, limbs twitching involuntarily, eyes fluttering. "I feel destruction," he whispered. Rhys crouched beside him. "You good?" Kelver blinked once. "Why? Why what? Why do you do this to yourselves?" Rhys exhaled. "Because it reminds us we're alive." Kelver's eyes remained locked on him. "It nearly killed me. That's part of the appeal." Over the following days, Kelver remained in observation. Rhys visited often, bringing less aggressive samples: mild chili, paprika, even cinnamon. Kelver refused most of them, but eventually agreed to try a pinch of smoked chipotle. The reaction was dramatic but less catastrophic. His skin flushed deep orange, and for an hour he spoke in poetic riddles about the fire ghosts that danced on his tongue. Rhys recorded every word. By the end of the week, Kelver requested another taste. "I believe I may have enjoyed it," he admitted. Rhys grinned. "See? You're one of us now." Kelver glanced at the Reaper container, now sealed and labeled "Do Not Touch." "Not that one. Ever again." Agreed. Word spread quickly through the Vellari diplomatic channels. Spice became a topic of fascination. A new delegation arrived, including a cultural biologist named Havorin, who brought portable scanners and a whole team of analysts. "We've studied your species' sensory thresholds," Havorin told Rhys during their first meeting. "And we've concluded your spice tolerance is an evolutionary anomaly. Possibly even a pathology." Rhys leaned back in his chair. "We've been called worse." Havorin gestured to a table of prepared dishes. "We wish to observe a human consuming these substances." "Live?" Rhys frowned. That's not a show we do on command. Kelver's experience has generated considerable academic interest. We must understand the neurological mechanisms involved. Rhys considered. You want spice? Fine. But I'm choosing the dish. That evening, Rhys cooked a bowl of ghost pepper chili. The smell alone cleared the room of most of the Vellari entourage. Havoran stayed, flanked by 2 technicians and a drone recording biometric data. Rhys took one bite. His face went red immediately. Sweat beaded down his neck. He coughed once, then again, wheezing slightly before raising a hand to signal he was okay. Kelver, watching from the corner, looked horrified and amazed. Rhys set his spoon down. All right, now you. Havoran shook his head. We are not constructed for this. No one is, Rhys said, voice hoarse. That's why it matters. The Vellari eventually developed a diluted capsaicin serum to simulate the sensation without inducing total biological failure. It became a rite of passage among their scholars and diplomats. Kelver, now something of a legend among his people, returned to Earth with Rhys 2 months later for a culinary summit. He refused to eat anything made by a chef who hadn't burned their own face at least once. Rhys introduced him to habanero chocolate. Kelver wept openly and thanked him. Your pain is beautiful. Rhys smiled. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me at dinner. The cultural bridge formed by a single pepper had done more for human-Vellari relations than 3 decades of formal negotiations. Spice, once dismissed as primitive self-harm, was now revered as an art form. And Rhys Maddox, sweating and red-faced, became the first Terran diplomat to receive the Vellari Order of Sensory Valor. He accepted it with a milkshake in one hand and a bottle of hot sauce in the other. The Vellari delegation arrived at the culinary lab just before midday, their transport pod humming softly as it settled onto the padded docking ring. Rhys stood waiting at the entrance of the embassy's new sensory research annex, arms crossed, watching with a mix of anticipation and wariness as the doors hissed open and 4 lanky figures emerged. Each wore the standard Vellari neural harness, a web-like mesh that glimmered faintly across their heads designed to monitor involuntary impulses and environmental stress responses. Kelver led them, slower than before, moving with the cautious dignity of someone who'd once danced too close to a bonfire and still carried the scent of singed pride. Behind him, a shorter Vellari with a fluid gait approached, examining Rhys with the calculating interest of someone inspecting a volatile specimen. You're the mouth burner, she said. Rhys blinked. I've been called worse. I am Ven. I analyze species with pain-positive behavioral loops. Good. You'll have your hands full. Kelver gestured toward the building. We've come to observe the process from the beginning. Soil to sauce. Follow me. Just don't touch anything red without gloves. The annex had been expanded significantly since the spice incident. What began as a repurposed conference room now boasted controlled grow chambers, fermentation vats, and a climate-modulated kitchen. A single glass wall overlooked the hydroponic rows of chili plants, Bachellochia, scorpion, dragon's breath, all thriving under artificial sunlight. Rhys led them past the observation deck and into the prep area where his assistant Lara stood meticulously washing her hands. Lara, this is Ven, our newest pain enthusiast. Don't let the twitching eye fool you, she's curious, not hostile. I am not twitching, Ven said. You are, Kelver muttered. Lara nodded politely. We've got fresh extracts ready. We're starting with infusion trials today, measuring vapor response, taste gradients, and pulmonary tolerance. Ven tilted her head. You inhale them? Sometimes, Rhys said. Usually by accident. The first trial involved a mild chili oil vapor released carefully into a sealed chamber. Ven stepped inside, eyes wide with a shimmer of anticipation while Kelver monitored her vitals from the control panel. 2 minutes in, her shoulders twitched. Describe the sensation, Rhys said through the intercom. It is a sting. But it lingers. It moves along my inner membranes. Normal. That's the capsaicin binding to your TRPV1 receptors. Ven exhaled slowly. I am perceiving a sensation of urgency, but not threat. Kelver adjusted a dial. Increased by half a Kelvin. The vapor thickened slightly. Ven's translucent skin flushed faint violet. She blinked rapidly, then began pacing in a tight circle. Now? Lara asked. It has become unreasonable. I wish to exit. Opening, Rhys said, tapping the release. Ven stepped out and immediately crouched, panting through her secondary throat slits. I must document this. Kelver handed her a tablet. Your pulse spiked, but no collapse. I understand now. It is not masochism. It is controlled chaos. Rhys leaned against the counter. That's a poetic way of putting it. By early evening, the group had moved into the kitchen for direct ingestion trials. Lara laid out a selection of sauces calibrated to specific Scoville thresholds, each served with a neutral-based plain rice crackers, cucumber slices, and lab-processed bread circles the Vellari found texturally agreeable. Ven pointed to the dark red sauce in the third bowl. This one. What is its function? It's a habanero tamarind blend, Lara said. Used on tacos back home. Balanced heat, sour finish, mild sweetness. Ven dipped a cracker, took a cautious bite, and stood completely still for 4 seconds. Then her limbs flared outward. What is happening? She gasped. Why are my eyes attempting to flood? That's tearing. Natural response, Rhys said. Your body's trying to flush the irritant. Ven leaned forward, drooling slightly. Is this a ritual of dominance? No, Kelver said. It is recreational. I require lying down. They guided her to a padded bench where she lay flat, gripping her own wrists. This is extraordinary, she whispered. I perceive both dread and exhilaration. Is this why you continue? Rhys sat nearby. It's one reason. Some folks jog. Others climb cliffs. We eat things that punch us in the throat. Kelver folded his arms. We were taught suffering signaled failure. But your kind reframe it as progress. Not always, Rhys shrugged. But when we can, we do. The next morning, before sunrise, Kelver found Rhys in the annex's greenhouse, cross-pollinating 2 hybrid chili plants with a feathered wand. You should explain why this matters, Kelver said. Because it's alive, Rhys replied. Every pepper's different. Weather, soil, stress, it all changes the result. You can't fully control them, only guide them. Kelver examined the plants. Your species prefers variables to constants. We thrive in mess. Kelver nodded slightly. Ven has requested another trial today. She will attempt ingestion while in a meditative state. That's ambitious. She believes it may reduce her panic reflex. By midday, Ven sat cross-legged in the sensory chamber, eyes closed, a drop of Carolina Reaper extract placed delicately on her tongue. She held still for nearly a minute. Then her hands trembled. I am seeing movement in the air, she muttered. There are patterns. Vibrations. Lara watched her vitals. Neural activity spiking. Not dangerous. Just intense. Kelver watched silently as Ven began to laugh sharp, staccato bursts that echoed unnervingly. Rhys raised an eyebrow. Is she okay? She is. Euphoric, Kelver said. After a controlled cool-down, Ven sat in the recovery room with a damp cloth over her head. I have never experienced a non-lethal existential reset, she whispered. That's the ghost pepper effect, Rhys said. You go to the edge, wave at the void, then come back craving ice cream. I wish to bring this to my scholars, Ven said. It is not just sensation, it is confrontation. Kelver looked to Rhys. We have never embraced discomfort as a tool. You wield it like a chisel. That's the trick. Pain tells us where we end. We just like to tap the boundaries sometimes. That evening, the Vellari requested a formal debrief. Rhys stood before them in the embassy's auditorium, a modest room more accustomed to quarterly trade reports than philosophical reflection. Then addressed the gathered crowd. We sought to understand the Terran's irrational ingestion of chemical deterrents. What we found was a system of deliberate sensory exploration. A kind of edible philosophy. Rhys chuckled. That's going on a t-shirt. Kelver stepped forward. Ambassador Maddox. We would like permission to establish a Vellari culinary observatory on Earth. To study your spice cultures firsthand. Rhys blinked. You want to build a lab? On Earth? With kitchens. And gardens. And trained humans to guide us. You're asking to open a restaurant. We are asking, Ven corrected, to learn how to set fire to ourselves. And survive. Rhys sighed. You'll need permits. And fire extinguishers. Agreed. As the audience dispersed, Kelver lingered. You know, Rhys said, a year ago, you couldn't make eye contact with a hot sauce bottle. Kelver tilted his head. I am still afraid. But now I am curious. That's how it starts. Outside, the light dimmed under Zelmanar 4's dual sunset. In the greenhouse, a new hybrid chili began to bud orange with streaks of deep violet, bred from two peppers never meant to meet. Rhys made a note on the label, experimental. Consume with care. The interior of the Earth-based Vellari Culinary Observatory, formerly a decommissioned hydroponics dome on the outskirts of Canberra, smelled like confusion and ambition. The walls had been refitted with humidity panels, the floor lined in heat-resistant polymer tiles, and the entire structure was now supervised by an extremely nervous human nutritionist named Dr. Eleanor Cade. She adjusted her glasses as the Vellari stepped into the main test kitchen, each of them wrapped in loose-fitting bio sleeves that shimmered faintly under the artificial sunlight overhead. The sleeves weren't for fashion, they were to catch sweat, something their physiology had only recently begun to produce in response to spice exposure. All right, Dr. Cade said, eyeing the tray of pre-measured sauces with the same wariness one might reserve for unstable explosives. Each dose is calibrated to minimize risk. You will not consume anything without my clearance. You will not self-administer. And if you feel any of the following, blurred vision, chest tension, or the sensation of your skeleton vibrating, you will raise your hand immediately. One of the Vellari, a slender academic named Terran, raised a hand. I haven't consumed anything yet, he said. Then you're either very nervous or already hallucinating. Either way, sit down. Terran obeyed. It had been 3 weeks since the Vellari Council approved the Earth installation. Since then, dozens of volunteers had arrived, each with a different motive. Some were sensory researchers. Others were artists. A few were just bored. But none had any real culinary training, which made Dr. Cade's job feel like managing a daycare full of toddlers with tasers. She pointed to the first dish, a small ceramic spoon holding a drop of chili oil infused with habanero, ginger, and clove. We're starting with taste recognition. No swallowing. Let it sit on the tongue for 4 seconds. Then spit. The first Vellari, a matte-skinned male named Lauren, stepped forward and took the spoon with delicate fingers. He placed it on his tongue and immediately went cross-eyed. Time, said Cade. He spat into the disposal cup and coughed once, the sound dry and papery. I perceive citrus, smoke, and the concept of betrayal. That's the clove, she said. Terran took his turn. He lasted 6 seconds and spat with more enthusiasm than grace. My teeth feel expectant. That's not a valid sensation. It is now. The third subject, a younger female named Zealot, showed no visible reaction. She blinked once and nodded. It sings. Cade tilted her head. Sings? A harmonic vibration localized behind the eye ridge. Like a synthetic lullaby. I find it nourishing. Cade hesitated, then made a note. By mid-afternoon, they'd progressed to ingestion trials. Cade kept a close eye on the biometric display's heart rate, core temperature, pupil dilation, while the Vellari sampled a mild jalapeno sesame paste on rice flour discs. Lauren chewed carefully, face unreadable. Zealot blinked rapidly, nostrils flared. Terran made a soft keening sound and clutched the table. I feel as though I'm being interrogated by an emotion. Cade handed him a chilled cucumber slice. Neutralize it. He chewed the cucumber inside. It forgives me. That's the water content. No, he said. It's forgiveness. An hour later, during the recovery period, Zealot approached Cade near the hydration station. I've reviewed your literature, she said. Many of your species willingly consume capsaicin despite gastrointestinal distress. Some even pursue it in competitive formats. Correct, Cade said. It's not always healthy, but it's culturally significant. That duality intrigues me. In our culture, consumption is either nurturing or neutral, never adversarial. That's why you're here? To understand the contradiction. Zealot considered that. Do you ever regret it? Sometimes. Usually around 3 a.m. But then someone invents a new sauce and we dive back in like lunatics. The door hissed open and Rhys Maddox entered, carrying a box of labeled vials and a slightly apologetic expression. I brought the samples from Queensland. Ghost chili extract, fermented with mango and black pepper. Thought you'd want to try it on a fresh group. Cade gestured toward the observation room. They're still up, right? Barely. He stepped inside and placed the vials on the steel prep counter. Each one's diluted to 1/10. Still potent enough to ruin someone's weekend. Zealot stepped forward, examining the vials. This was engineered intentionally? Rhys nodded. By a man with too much time and not enough caution. Thurn leaned in and sniffed one. Then recoiled. It has a gravitational presence. Cade rolled her eyes. No sniffing. You'll irritate your olfactory membranes. I already have, he said, eyes watering. And now I wish to taste it. Of course you do. Rhys prepped a tiny droplet on a neutral base and handed it to the wren, who stared at it like a philosopher facing a riddle. Then he bit. For 5 seconds, nothing. Then his limbs went rigid, and he began humming a low, warbling tone that vibrated the glassware. Zealot crouched beside him. Can you speak? It is a memory, he whispered. Of something I have never lived. Rhys turned to Cade. That's new. She folded her arms. I'm logging it as temporal disassociation with poetic overlay. By evening, the team had stabilized and hydrated, lounging in the recovery chamber under cool spectrum lights. Cade reviewed the neurofeedback scans, frowning slightly. They're adapting faster than expected. Some of them are developing capsaicin pathways similar to our own desensitization responses. Rhys sat beside her, sipping coconut water. They're learning to enjoy it. No, she said. They're learning to survive it. Enjoyment comes later. Zealot approached them, her posture relaxed but eyes alert. I've been composing a sensory map, she said. A flavor cartography. Each taste we've encountered seems to unlock a different emotional response. I believe we can translate these into musical expressions. Rhys raised an eyebrow. You want to turn spice into music? Why not? You turned it into sport. Cade laughed. Fair point. Zealot placed a small device on the table. A soft hum emerged, shifting in pitch and tempo. The tones rose with simulated Scoville levels, each spike producing a discordant harmony that lingered like the aftertaste of a good burn. Rhys leaned in. It's ugly. Zealot nodded. As it should be. The following day, the Vellari completed their final trial, a controlled meal featuring 8 spice elements, each paired with complementary cooling agents. No one collapsed. No one hallucinated. Thurn cried but claimed it was by choice. Cade logged the results and closed the file. All right, she said. You're certified. Lauren looked confused. Certified for what? Not dying. That's the first step toward appreciation. Rhys stood near the exit, arms crossed. Next time, we'll teach you how to cook it yourselves. Zealot turned to Cade. Do you believe we will ever crave it? Cade considered. Not in the same way. But I think you'll learn to chase what it unlocks. Zealot nodded. Then we are ready. As the sun dipped behind the dome's curved ceiling, the Vellari gathered their notes, devices, and remaining taste samples. They left in quiet formation, their movements slower but more assured. No one requested assistance. No one needed it. Cade leaned against the counter, watching them disappear into the corridor. Rhys nudged her. You think they'll keep at it? They survived 8 flavors in one sitting. I've seen frat boys tap out at 3. So yes. Oh, definitely. She turned off the overhead lights one by one, the kitchen returning to stillness. Next group arrives next week, she said. Rhys groaned. I'll bring the yogurt. And they left the lab behind, the air still tinged with ghost pepper and quiet triumph.